the number of cases in the United States has been falling lately, but now it's levelled off. And it's increasing in quite a few states again now, so there's still cause for concern there. In the UK, there was a record number of cases yesterday. In Europe, we know the cases are going up really very rapidly in France, in Spain, to a lesser degree in Italy, but Italy's still not too far behind. The infection's rumbling on in Australia, although it's largely controlled in Australia. But India is increasing very, very rapidly. There's an exponential increase in India, actually. That means the rate of acceleration is accelerating. But there's good news. The infection fatality rate seems to be low. Now, I've been doing some more work today with local scientists and mathematicians, actually. And I've got more good news on infection fatality rate, but I'm not going to do that in this video. That's for the next time. There are going to be a few difficult months, I believe, the next few months ahead. But then I am remarkably optimistic, and that's why I've called this video Optimism, that the vaccines are going to be effective, and that I believe, my current position is, I've been on record of saying this many times, I believe we can eradicate this virus. I don't believe it's going to become endemic. I don't believe it's going to be a problem for decades. I'm optimistic we can get rid of it in a season or two, or perhaps at most 3 years. That's my current position. Now, I want to tell you why I'm optimistic about that. So this is about some detail about that. Vaccination saves so many lives. We forget that most people that have ever died in the history of humanity have died of infectious disease. That's been the main cause of death throughout human history. We forget that. We forget that. Now, moving on to this vaccine particularly now, why I'm optimistic. SARS coronavirus 2 vaccine, back to the topic in hand. Now, this is based on a paper by William Petrie, he's a physician and a scientist, so good stuff, University of Virginia. That's a hyperlink, click on it. And that's the original article, do read it. But I back this up with these points up with all the relevant research as well. Now, the first reason for optimism, the immune system clears the virus in 99% of infections. So in SARS coronavirus 2, the immune system gets rid of the virus. It can clear it completely, gets rid of it. This means the virus can be eradicated from the body via immunological mechanisms, which of course vaccines stimulate. So for example, HIV is never eradicated, it's always there. It can't be cleared. So this is a virus which is clearable by the immune system. Therefore, I believe a vaccine can achieve the same. So the immune system clears the virus in 99% of infections. 1% or less than 1%, unfortunately, will die from the infection, but the vast majority of people are able to clear the virus. Don't take my word for it, there's the evidence. Some may have low levels of virus in the body for up to 3 months, but they're normally not infectious after 10 days. Now, we've looked at this quite extensively on this channel, that people have been shedding the virus sometimes for weeks or even sometimes a couple of months. And the virus gives them a positive test on the PCR test, which is the antigen test, but that's remarkably sensitive. So some people are still testing positive after months. Originally we thought that was reinfection, but in all the cases that we looked at in the South Korean study, for example, it was found not to be that. There are a few cases of reinfections in the world, but very few. And the virus particles, or the residual parts of the virus that these people were shedding, was not infectious in the vast majority of cases after 10 days. So in other words, the human immune system can take this virus in, make immunity to it, eradicate the virus so that someone is not infectious after 10 days. So that's optimism. This is an eradicatable virus from the body. It can be got rid of. Now, HIV, the immune system fails to clear it. It's there forever. Someone never gets rid of HIV. And it's unimaginable that there would be a treatment that completely got rid of HIV, because it encodes itself into the DNA. And also HIV is a rapid mutator, whereas SARS coronavirus 2 has got self-correcting mechanisms that corrects faults in the RNA replication process, whereas HIV doesn't. So it's a much slower mutator compared to HIV, for example. We could mention other viruses. So it's not a fast mutator. So that's reason for optimism. And if it's not a fast mutator, I'm optimistic that one vaccine can combat all strains of SARS coronavirus 2 causing Covid-19 in the world. I remain optimistic of that. So that's one reason for optimism. Now, the next reason for optimism is that the SARS coronavirus 2 needs its spike protein to be infectious. We've done this many times, haven't we? The spike protein that actually gets into these ACE2 receptors in the human cells, and that's how the virus gets its genetic material into the cell. So it needs these spike proteins to be infectious. And antibodies have been proved in laboratories in vitro to bind to the spike protein. So we know that the antibodies bind to the spike protein like this. Clog it up, neutralize it, and absolutely prevent it from getting into an ACE2 receptor. They stop it from being infectious. Therefore, neutralize the spike protein. We know this works. We know the chemistry is there to facilitate this process. Vaccines in clinical trials generate spike protein antibodies, the immunoglobulin Gs that we've looked at before. We know this happens. So putting these two things together, we know that in the laboratory that the antibodies, these immunoglobulins, will neutralize the spike proteins. Putting that together with the fact that we know the vaccines generate the spike protein antibodies, it's really hard to see how that's not going to work. Now, having said that, we don't know yet because we haven't got the data in on the phase 3 clinical trials. But it really is, there's something awfully wrong with the theory if that doesn't work. There's something awfully wrong with the theory, and I don't think there is. I think that theory is good. Now, and so we've got Operation Warp Speed, and multiple vaccines are being developed around the world. So we've got lots of horses in this race. Now, Operation Warp Speed is demanding 300 million doses of vaccine by 2021, January. I think it's going to do it. I was pessimistic about this for a while, but the rumours that are coming from the people in the know about this are optimistic about this, that vaccination is probably going to start next month or November at the latest. This is what seems to be coming out now from certain people that seem to know what they're talking about, and I don't think they would deliberately mislead us. Would hope not anyway. The budget from the States is $8 billion are spent on it so far. Now, the leading contenders, the Moderna National Institute of Health vaccine, seems to be doing well. That might be rolled out really quite soon. As we've looked at before, the clinical trials from that seem to be going so well, it may become unethical to carry on injecting people with a placebo once the data from that vaccine is in. And again, very encouraging rumours coming out on that, and encouraging comments from people in the know. In the UK, same phase 3 clinical trials, the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine. Similar stage, the CanSino one, which is the Chinese one. I couldn't find anything specific on it. The information on the other ones was all readily available when I was looking. And the other one, of course, is the Pfizer BioNTech, which is the US-German collaboration, also in phase 3 clinical trials, as we looked at recently. Now, another reason for extreme optimism, we've talked about the neutralising antibodies and how important they are. Well, these vaccines are producing more neutralising antibodies than someone who's recovered from the infection. 2 to 4 times more neutralising antibodies than someone who's recovered from the infection. Now, that's good. I'm delighted about that. I think it will work. But we know the antibodies are short-lived. What I'm more reassured about for the longer-term immunity is that these vaccines are generating the cytotoxic memory T cell response. And I'm optimistic that will last for a long period of time. Safety demonstrated in phase 1 and phase 2 clinical trials for all of these 4. Now, just as an aside, I haven't written it down here, but the TASS news agency in Russia has just released information that's going to start vaccinating volunteers. But so far we know that these vaccines are producing good numbers of antibodies and a T-cell response. Safety demonstrated with these vaccines, and phase 3 trials well underway. It started, was it June, July they started? I can't remember. Anyway, 2-3 months in now, they're fairly advanced. Now, the other thing that's interesting is in the United States anyway, and I think to some extent in the UK by various companies, manufacturing is already underway. So manufacturing of these vaccines, or I'm pretty sure the Moderna one and the BioNTech one, I'm not so sure about these Oxford and the CanSino one, but the vaccines are already being manufactured. They're already producing millions of doses. Now, if the phase 3 clinical trials comes and says, sorry, this vaccine doesn't work, I don't think that's going to happen. But if it did, it could happen. Then they'd have to chuck out an awful lot of vaccines because they're making them already, hoping that the phase 3 clinical trial will say, yes, this is efficacious, go ahead and start using it. So they're actually producing it ahead of time. So the phase 3 process and the manufacturing process is going on in tandem, which normally never happens, of course. So that's going to speed things up quite dramatically. Another reason I'm optimistic about the January 21 timescale. And the distribution logistics are already in place. We've talked about this a bit. You know, sometimes you need a cold chain, sometimes it's a frozen chain. Distributing vaccines is a bit of a process, but in the United States anyway, that is in place. Less information as to whether that's in place in the UK and in Europe, but I suspect I would hope we've got some tentative plans for distribution from the manufacturers to the people that are actually going to be sticking it in arms. And they are all going to be injected at the moment. People are working on an oral vaccine, but the first ones are going to be injectable. So to conclude this video, vaccination has saved untold millions of lives. It's a tremendous medical advance. It's saving lives now through measles and all the other things that the diseases have been suppressed or nearly eradicated. And I'm optimistic. I'm actually optimistic that this vaccine is going to work, and whether we end up with one effective vaccine, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, doesn't matter. We're going to end up with at least one that works, and I think we could be ending up with 4 or 5 that are going to be efficacious vaccines. And I believe that will eradicate the disease 21 to 22. Probably 2023, I would hope, at the latest. So, difficult times ahead immediately in the next few weeks. I want to focus on that in the next video. But I also want to give you information in the next video that I've been working on that shows that in the first wave of this pandemic in March, April, there was a certain case fatality rate, but we massively underdiagnosed the amount of cases, meaning the case fatality rate is way lower than we had thought it was. Probably we might end up with a case fatality rate of less than 0.3. That's all for today, so thank you for watching as always.